Ready to move out.
Bell and Company.
Hey there. Yeah, it is. It is Bell and Company, and we are missing somebody today. I'm still here. I'm Mario J. Bell. You just heard my voice on there on our open end, and Libby's, but Libby didn't make it today. She's not feeling so good. I think she went on a bender last night, so she's not here. I didn't think the dummy can party, but the dummy can party.
That's how it goes sometimes.
I like to joke about that. Call her. She's not dumb. She's actually very, very intelligent little girl. But for the video, everybody watching YouTube, that's Libby, the little doll. But anyway, so she didn't make it. But I do have a cool guest with us, and also every Sunday we get to have Joe Brunker. Joe's here. Hey, Joe.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, hanging in there. Like I told everybody in the last couple of weeks, I'm way better than I was about 6 weeks ago. Let's put it that way.
I definitely get that.
Yeah, it was a rough patch that I went through, but I'm okay. I'm here. And Libby's not having any of those kind of problems.
That's good.
Yeah, no, she's not having any heart issues or anything. But we have a great guest that you turned us on to here with us today as well. And I don't want to say your last name wrong, so I'll say Tim. And how do you say the last name?
Schaiberger.
Schaiberger. Oh, that's just like it looks. That's cool.
Really fun way to remember it is my college ex-girlfriend's father always like, "Oh, a bashful sandwich, huh?"
Oh, sure. Okay, the actual translation. Gotcha. All right. Well, now I'll just remember you as a bashful sandwich.
Yep.
So, Tim Bashful Sandwich, welcome to the show. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Mario.
Like I said, Joe had said that he could get us some cool guests, and here's one right now.
I appreciate it.
So we've got a lot of things that we could mention because I'm looking at your bio going, wow. I mean, I don't know where do you want to start? Maybe just how you got into everything you're doing, the writing, the acting. Knowing Joe.
We
can start there. How do you know Joe?
Enigma. I actually worked with Joe's cousin Brett at the Comedy Shrine years ago, and I met Joe through karaoke. Actually, I believe the first time we met, wasn't it? Chelios?
Yeah,
was the
Chelios
first time.
for sure.
As a bar in Aurora that I do karaoke at, and Joe came in, and we kind of clicked, and Brett happened to be there, and we met. And I think we had met outside of Brett, and then I found out it was his cousin. So I'm like, oh, this is cool.
Small world.
Very small world. But then I found out Joe was in a band, and he realized I did music as well. And I started following his band a little bit, went to a couple shows. And we've just kind of just stayed in touch. He was one of came to my first place I was selling my book, which was nice. Joe came and bought a copy.
There you go.
Off me, so I could sign it for him and everything.
No doubt.
But
support the friends and family thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Gotta.
Yeah, but I would have to say that, this came to fruition, just us kind of talking and being on the same kind of wavelength about things, it seems like.
We both tend to write, both tend to sing, act, It's
But
just,
you never sang together, right? In a band or anything?
No.
Maybe a song in karaoke when we've been
little
drinking.
karaoke, and that's fun.
Yeah.
I haven't done karaoke in forever. But yeah, we used to do it down at a place in Northside Chicago. That another show I was doing with this gentleman by the name of Larry. He's actually the governor. He used to do a cable show for years. He would always talk us into going with him. There were two places. One's called Shakers, and the other one is an Irish bar, and I'm drawing a blank right now. Harrigan's Irish Pub.
Nice.
So we used to do it there. Like
I know Shakers. Isn't that? I thought that was Ottawa.
Well, there must be another one because there's Shakers right on Clark. I don't know. I think it's called Shakers on Clark.
Yeah, they probably do have one. I'm guessing.
Yeah, so they do open mic stuff, they do comedy, and then of course karaoke. So yeah, but it's been a while since I've done it. So you do it quite often? I take it. Tim.
I did for a while, and then I over the summer. It's really weird that we're talking about music. Because this summer I kind of had a break. I work as I'm the building sub at Herget Middle School, so that's kind of my full-time job, and I coach football for the middle school there, and actually left work early today at the Fox Valley Park District. But
cool.
How I started, I kind of been getting to a lot of open mics lately. My big thing, I moved down here around late 2019 to be closer to my daughter. My ex-wife had moved down here, and my daughter moved down to this area. To the
daughter came with, but not the ex-husband. Huh?
Yeah. So anyhow, I ended up moving down to Aurora, and then 6 months. I was here 6 months, and a plague hit. So all the things I wanted to pretty much do, couldn't do it.
Everything was closed down.
Everything
right?
was closed down. So I was trying to get out there, but then I got to a point where I'm kind of I'm from a very small town in northern Michigan, so it was kind of like a culture shock, and it's also way more expensive to live down here.
You still drove cars, right? You're not where you got the carriages, the island. What island is that? Mackinac. Not by Mackinac.
No, that was. I've been at least 20 times. I've been to Mackinac Island. No, I'm in the. If you ever look at next time you want to look at America at night,
Where are we at? Boop.
Right.
The best way to notice is when you see America lit up at night, and you look at Michigan, that beautiful mitten. You look at that big black chunk in the corner about over like the index finger in the middle of the palm where there's no lights at all. That's where I'm from.
That's where the dark part of Michigan, part of the Upper Peninsula area.
Yeah, the
cool.
woods. You can drive in the woods for days.
So this is
That's
a
awesome.
little bit of a change for you coming down here. This is big city land now.
This is big city. I tell people I'm going into the city, and they're like, "Oh, Chicago." Well, I just meant I'm going into Aurora. I'm
Yeah.
like, that's not the city, buddy. I'm like,
To us, that's nothing. That's nothing.
I come from a excuse me. I come from a county of 17,000. So
wow, the county had
The
17,000?
whole county.
the whole county.
Wow.
I was
Our
in the. I was
town has
on
like
the city council
30,000
for
almost.
the,
No,
in the
20,
city.
24, I think.
Yep. I was in the. I lived in the biggest city in our county, and we had 2,000 people.
Wow.
Aurora has 203,000.
Yeah,
people.
right. Aurora's huge.
I've noticed even when I just drive to work now from my new place, I'm like driving, and I'm like, man, I just realized I drove through like 3 of my hometowns.
That is
just to
so
get to
wild.
work.
Man, that's got to be some culture shock. I thought I had culture shock. I came from Northwest Indiana, but the farmy area of it's south,
Yeah.
of the Northwest Indiana part. And, coming up here is definitely different because, like you said, it's mostly farm and everybody knew everybody.
Yep.
Everybody knew everybody's business, which I never really liked. But
Well, what's funny is one of the things, I mean, obviously, never had the opportunity because all the things I was kind of wanted to work on when I got down here, all the COVID crap hit or whatever. But I really was having this idea that I thought this would be a fun concept for a podcast would be like have somebody like a country mouse, city mouse type thing. And then have like my thesis of the whole thing was how everybody hates their hometown. And when I first moved to Aurora, everybody's just crapping on it. And I'm like, do you realize there's more than one bar here? Like, there's like parks. There's a like, what are you talking? Oh,
Yeah, no,
I'm like, you don't understand. We had one bar in my entire town.
we're spoiled living down here. We've got everything you need. And all these cities. I mean, this is not normal for Southern Illinois, right? Or which, similar where you're at in Michigan. There's like, it's very small.
We're kind of in a
lot of farm.
metropolis out here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Oh,
Yeah, now
definitely.
that I know they call it metropolis, but it ain't that big. That's
Yeah.
where the Superman town. Have you ever heard of it?
The where?
It's Superman's the town he's from. Metropolis.
Metropolis.
Oh yeah, that's in
Metropolis,
Illinois. That is in Illinois.
Illinois.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is
Nice.
very small.
Yeah, that's
So you would probably dig that. But
yeah,
anyway,
nice.
so that the big the big lights, the comedy scene, all the improv stuff didn't
Yeah.
bring you here. Then it was family.
So years ago, we want to start maybe getting into the book stuff that might explain what I was going to do.
There you go.
Wait, you have a book? Oh, I'm kidding.
Right.
What?
I'm kidding.
So,
Yeah. So Joe,
but that's
Tim,
a great, like, yeah, right. Like, let me just say, full disclosure, I didn't realize how many opportunities there were in the Chicago area as a kid. I just never got it. And even being in northern Michigan, we got WGN and stuff. So I grew up like Ryan Sandberg, and I remember watching Greg Maddux pitch and stuff. I was never a big baseball guy, but I'm like, man, that was kind of cool seeing those guys. And Ryan Sandberg, because he was always fun dude to watch.
Yeah, you got the Superstation GN up there. Maybe the
Yeah.
regular WGN. I don't know if it bounced that far on the
I
signal.
think it
I'm
was
not
the
sure.
Superstation, but because I don't remember seeing local news. But the Paul games and stuff, as I would be on there and
Jeez.
stuff.
Yeah, that's
sometimes.
that's the regular channel.
Yeah, so
like
that
out of
was
Chicago.
So just growing up, the book that I wrote is the story about my grandfather, and when he was a 16-year-old, he went to Spain.
Let's talk about the book. It's called A Boy
yeah.
Scout Goes to Spain and Other Stories.
Yes, and the other stories are what kind of lead to me eventually. So, because my family ended up in northern Michigan, and that's why I was there. But people read this book, and it's like, wait, this is Toledo, Ohio, and people get kind of confused. So, there's not a long convoluted story, but in 1840, 3 Schaibergers came over on a ship from Germany, and they moved to central Ohio. There were 2 brothers and a cousin. Like the 2 brothers, their ancestors ended up becoming my great grandfather. He owned a tavern in Toledo, and that's where my grandfather grew up, was Toledo, Ohio.
Oh, Toledo, huh? Okay.
Yep. So that's where the connection comes to the book. Okay,
Cool.
so in 1934, he was 16 years old. He was a Boy Scout in Toledo, Ohio. And
Oh, there we go. Okay, now I see.
Now
I'm
that's where
trying
it's
to get
coming
it
from. Yep.
I got it now because
Yep.
I read the summary. I'm like, wait a minute.
And
now
then
I
he's
get it.
going to Spain. Just wait for it.
Yeah, I know. There's some suspense here. Got to keep the audience
So
involved.
it's a little, I like on the nose sometimes because my grandfather was 16. He was chosen to be part of an international delegation go between Toledo, Ohio, and Toledo, Spain. If you've ever heard of
like a sister city.
it was the world's first sister city.
Oh, no
And
kidding.
my
It's like what's that town?
Naperville has like 4 of them.
Charleston and Savannah, Georgia. Those are sister cities.
They don't always have the same name. He's going from Spain to
yeah. So
Ohio,
this was
same
just
name
the first since his Spanish teacher that had set the whole thing up over years had picked him to go with them on the delegation. So it was the first time there was an actual exchange of culture and ideas between people.
So he'd never left
Europe
Toledo before?
He had left Toledo before. That's kind of cool. As I was doing my research, I ended up coming across a handwritten, my typed up thing that my father had found that was handwritten by my grandpa about his summers on the farm in northern Michigan. And that's kind of the point of how we ended up there. Is he was called after he became a surgeon. He was called back up to northern Michigan.
Wow.
But when he was 16, so he was part of this international delegation. It was the top Spanish student. He went to like a very nice high school, and the number one Spanish student who was originally chosen to go got sick and couldn't.
Oh,
so my grandpa wasn't even supposed to go at all. So the guy who was supposed to go got sick, and then my grandpa ended up going in his stead. And
as luck will have it, and it became a legendary story that's now in this book. That's interesting.
Yeah, and what happened is,
I guess at the end of the day, he was supposed to go because there's, ultimately there's something that leads you there.
I think it was definitely destiny. And what's crazy is finding out all this stuff. I never knew any of these things. I never knew any of these things growing up. Like my grandpa my grandpa spoke Spanish, but he was a renowned surgeon and like just super like popular. Like they bought one of my grandparents.
Spanish, so he was German in Spanish, or just spoke.
He just spoke Spanish because he was just fluent in it from learning it as a kid.
I guess because we help with Latin, right? Latin, Spanish, Italian. It can all sound.
I got a D my first semester in college in Spanish. Be proud of me.
Hey no, man, just kidding. It comes in handy.
Second semester, it was a B plus.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I guess he would probably use that's kind of interesting. I mean,
well, the first semester
he needed it for Spain, obviously.
Yeah. Spain's got to be awesome. What did he say in the notes on it? I haven't read your full book fully yet. I've read 2 excerpts,
and I only saw the excerpts too. So you got to fill us all in.
Oh yeah. So the big thing is when he goes, he takes a journal with him and he keeps track of what happens every day that he is in Spain. That's pretty wild. So we have it's a handwritten original textual document of what happened.
And was he there during? Was it the war? That's what I wanted to clarify because I saw the excerpt.
Yeah. So it's very interesting because I done many hours of research into trying to get everything right. And interestingly enough, the first skirmish officially of the Spanish Civil War happened in October of 1934. So the first they would consider like before the uprising and the actual 1936 where the two parties went together, started fighting or whatever. So he was there he was there the summer before, but what's really cool in his book, at least twice, he mentions grown-ups telling him the government's going to fall any day.
So this is even before World War II. This is the Spanish one.
This is before World War II.
Yeah, not the World War.
My grandfather served in World War II.
Okay.
Yeah. So when he gets,
and then he became a surgeon. And
well, he was a surgeon first, so that's how he served differently. So he went. So anyhow, cool.
They recruited him probably because of to be a doctor over there, right?
He was actually
yes.
Yeah. So he was actually a military services person. So he was never enlisted. He got drafted. When he got drafted, my grandma was 6 months pregnant with my dad. So
he's
my
not
dad
supposed to go. I thought. Well, I guess they went anyway. They sent him. I thought when you have kids or kids on the way.
Pregnant with him, and he was kind of. I mean, World War II. I don't know if you could.
Yeah, that was also back then. Like when the
you just went. You went. My dad was. My dad was 3 before he got to meet my grandpa.
It was heavily
because he was over there.
Yeah, I don't remember. I know, like in the 1960s, there's a lot of my dad's friends went, and he didn't have to go because he was like the head of the household, and my grandmother had just had another kid, so he was able to not go because
got,
of that.
like,
So I thought that's
the
maybe not
4A
World
or
War
whatever.
II.
I
guess not.
The fact that he was a services officer, because he went in as a surgeon. He had been practicing. He got his medical degree in 1938.
What's a services officer? What do you mean? Like he had rank already? What is that?
Well, they go in as rank, but they're not going to see combat. They're not going to be on the front lines other than like a MASH unit.
Are they
like
going
a
to be more in
services
an
person
office?
isn't. They're more of a going in as an officer for a specific job. Like a services officer might be somebody if they needed like a lawyer or something to be drafted, or they needed like an engineer who isn't specifically looking for combat.
They're not necessarily the guys in the red zone right on the front line.
Yeah.
Basically a tech.
I kind of like a tech, but like the qualifications are like being a surgeon and that thing. So
exactly.
His
a
being
surgical tech.
There were actually so many surgeons from the University of Michigan when he was over there that the nickname of the hospital he was at was Little Ann Arbor. He went to the University of Michigan. He graduated.
They sent a lot of people over there then from Michigan. Interesting.
I love Michigan. It's
a great state, man. If you got to really like the outdoors, though. I mean, it's got to be your number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 things you like to do. The outdoors.
I'd say it's up there, bud.
we used to go camping.
I like going to open mics, and
I lived in Vicksburg for 3 months out near Kalamazoo.
Oh,
yeah,
Vicksburg?
that's kind of cityish. You know,
well, no, I was Vicksburg's more of like the woods and lakes and stuff like he's talking about. It's 20 minutes outside.
I've driven through there. I know where it is. I've driven up that way, but I've never been to. I've been to Kalamazoo.
When I was married,
I was working
at
at
my
a
daughter.
camp.
It was awesome living in like a small town, and like that was awesome. But then I got divorced and was single in my late 30s, and it's like
everybody knows everything.
Not many people around.
Especially when you got the divorce,
there, dude.
When the divorce happened,
to go like, ooh,
how's the dating pool?
Chili's, you got to drive an hour. It's like,
oh my gosh,
yeah.
But yeah, when you separate, I'm sure, or divorce, I'm sure everybody's like taking sides, right? The whole 1,700 people or whatever.
It was just it was just more that there was just everybody was it's a small town, everybody just kind of with everybody else. And
that's what I'm talking about. I had that too when my uncle got divorced. Like the whole the bar you'd go to, the everybody from City Hall, like everybody knew about him because he was involved with the city and he worked for the city of Chicago. But anyway, it was weird. It was like I don't up here, you don't even know your neighbors necessarily. So it's a lot different.
I mean, I make a lot of friends because I go out and do a lot of the things like the open mics and like karaoke and stuff. But yeah, like you don't just know your neighbors like in a huge city anymore. It's weird.
I mean, your grandpa was obviously a world traveler, getting into the war and then going as a serviceman over there, and then
my grandparents traveled the whole world all over afterwards. He's gotten to meet the King of Spain twice.
So the book story is not.
Was it the same king?
I think so, because he was like really old in the second one, so I think it was the same dude maybe.
Okay, cool.
But it might not have been because it was like 50 years later. But the dude was old. I don't know if it was the same guy, but he's got pictures and stuff.
I want to understand a little more about the book. Then it's when he was younger though, during the Spanish War, whatever they call the Spanish American. The Spanish Civil War, right?
Yeah.
Because this had nothing to do with his service in World War II. This is before then. The book is before that.
So the book is a combination. The first part of the book, I would say roughly about 80% of it covers 3 months of the summer of 1934 in Spain. It is organized around the celebration of Corpus Christi, which in the city of Toledo, Spain, is a huge celebration. They celebrate for a week. It's a huge religious big thing in Spain.
Yeah.
So they set it up. So they set it up to correspond with the delegation showing up. So he goes to that and goes to bullfights, and he describes bullfights like Hemingway. Like it's really cool. Like I would put it akin to how Hemingway kind of described bullfights. And then he goes to northern Africa and meets a bunch of Moors and a little girl missing a nose. And
the Moors. I thought they weren't around. I thought that culture was gone by then.
In 34, that's what they would still call Arabic people. Is more like that was still the common terminology in 1930s for that, because he was in Morocco.
Okay, yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Morocco,
that
Morocco,
part of Spain.
Yeah. So
actually, wait,
right
that's
there.
not even Spain. That's over now. You're on the edge of Egypt. I mean, Africa.
The part they were in, there's I'm gonna have to look at Tarif. There is a part of Morocco that is Spanish territory.
Oh, see, I get that mixed up, but it's not technically.
It is its own. Morocco is its own country now, but it have Spanish parts of it, because Spanish went back and forth over the years between Islamic rule and Catholic rule, back and forth over hundreds of years. So
sure, makes sense.
But he ends up. It's just kind of interesting to watch, because when he's there that first week during Corpus Christi, they're riding around in 9-seat cars and wonderful meals and all this stuff, and then you kind of realize, well, wait, it's 1934. There's something going on in the entire world right now. And he comes back, and then he starts noticing, oh, now all the poor people are back out, and now I'm seeing all like the lower what's happening during the Depression.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of his observations on things.
But in Spain, not in America.
But in Spain, yeah. So, but that's the thing is, it's I found out that one of the original journal, he keeps painstaking detail of every place he stayed, how much he spent. He was in a bus accident. He just completely describes what happened in the bus accident and stuff. And I also found out that he has a bunch of autographs in there from people he met. And two of the autographs were like people, like huge parts of both sides of the Civil War. I have autographs from like leaders of like both sides.
Generals and stuff.
Yeah. So my thing is, I was telling people, is like, didn't really know who these people are, like, but I might have like the Roosevelts or whatever of like
probably
of Spain
do.
or something,
Sure.
Yeah, you could have like thousands of dollars worth
dude,
of
it might,
paper and notes.
I guarantee the journal that I have is probably worth something.
That's pretty cool.
But it's crazy because what the beginning with them is like, just as a point of fact, 1934 took them 5 days to get in there on a boat.
I was going to say they weren't flying.
They weren't flying.
No.
So the first 5 days of the journal are him, taking the train to New York from Cleveland and then going overseas. So
Wow.
Did he bring up the food on the boat?
Oh, it was awesome.
Oh, he liked
Dude,
it. Good.
That's the whole point, dude, is everything that he did was like the high end gold laminated silverware.
Until he went back.
Well, how did you end up writing the book and not him, I guess is the question.
So I didn't know this even existed until I was 22, dude.
Okay.
When my dad died when I was younger, because my dad was in Vietnam and he ended up getting a glioblastoma, which is the cancer from Agent Orange.
From the Agent Orange stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry to hear that. Yeah.
So he died.
A lot of relatives.
I did the math the other day, and it's pretty depressing. But I have now been alive longer without my dad than with him.
Oh, that's not cool.
Yeah.
Sorry to hear
44,
that.
so that's not a good feeling. But that was a big catalyst once again to why I wanted to write all this stuff. And the sequel I'm working on is about my mom and dad during Vietnam. So that's going to be
okay. There's going to be another one.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
But so
were you supposed to tell us already?
I want everybody to know.
Yeah, he's already brought it up on online quite a bit. In his promotions.
And my mom's kind of help. It's kind of nice because my mom is helping me with stuff, and I'm learning things. Not bad things, but learning some stuff like.
You weren't expecting.
Let me give you I don't want this to get too steamy, everybody, but this came from my mom. She wanted to you're going to get to the part where we're on when your dad's on R&R and we're in Hawaii, and I'm like, yeah, I know, and I know it's a love. I know I almost like a love story, but let's not get too deep.
In a journal.
No. Well, this is my mom giving me the backstory because I never got to talk to my dad about any of this stuff for various reasons. But long story short, she sends me this list, and she's like, when I first saw him, he just didn't look like the man I knew. And I'm like, okay. He's like bruised, but still vicious like an animal. I'm like, oh my God, what am I reading here, Mom? And then she goes, and then the last word of this.
What are you reading?
What my mom sent to me. So no, she just wrote this. She was thinking back on it the other day.
Oh,
so this is a 77-year-old. So this is.
I got you.
Let me put y'all in. This is a 77-year-old woman writing this.
Is interesting.
The next line, and then we got in the shower and discovered each other again. I'm like,
I don't know if I want to know that.
I mean, the older you get, the less filter you have.
I guess
because
so.
the less you
love
care.
my mom, and that was.
It was want that in the book or what? That's
everything, dude. Full disclosure. Found out my grandma was like. My grandma was like a philanderer. And
I thought you were gonna say a swinger, but okay.
No, not a swinger. She was like. Date like married men and stuff. Like, dude, I found out.
Oh wait, philanderer. Yeah, that's not good. That's worse than being a swinger.
You think? That's what I found out. And then she ended up being the
boy. I can't wait to read this book.
Treasurer for like 20 years.
And this is nonfiction,
dude. I don't.
This isn't
Phil Anders. Not as cool as Phil.
Bro, even my fiction is based on nonfiction. So, but so anyhow. I found out about this whole thing. Like you said, why didn't he write? This is a great story, right? You think he would have written a book about it or something.
Exactly. That's what I'm getting at. So let's hear what happened. Why?
I didn't even know this had happened. So I'm guessing the fact that he never talked about it or mentioned anything about it. My grandpa had done and accomplished and experienced so much in his life.
Sounds like
that something like that, which to some people would be like, that's the greatest thing I ever did, or that was just a life change. Like I think it just was just on his back burner.
Maybe he didn't feel the need to stroke his ego,
or he
didn't have one.
I mean, he did.
Well, he
he's
possibly did.
single, but yeah, his he does not age well. But we'll get into that in the sequel. But anyhow, his thing was I just didn't know about it. When I was a kid. They moved to when I was. Because people are like, oh, you're close with your grandpa. Why don't you know more about him? I'm like, I was 13 when he died, and the 3 years before he lived in Arizona. How close were you to your grandpa?
You're not even seeing him, right?
You know,
Yeah, that's true.
So people like, you should have known, like yelling at me about not knowing more. I'm like, dude, I wrote a book. Like, what are you talking about? I did a
You
lot.
know enough right now to write the book. Again,
Yeah.
All I remember from my mom's dad was
I want to say your
I
name
was
right.
eating Doritos in the living room, and he freaked out on me. He was like,
Shag carpeting?
"You get those cheesy figures out of here! I tell you what."
That's your only memory of your
That's all
grandpa?
I remember.
Jeez.
Yeah, my dad's mom, I met one time. We went to a Texan restaurant. You guys have Texans around here? It was a
You
big
mean Tex-Mex?
No. It was called the Texan restaurant.
Oh, no.
They serve chili and
No.
okay, that's got to be
Maybe that's a Southern
Maybe
shit.
that's a Michigan.
I think
thing.
they were
Or
located
Michigan.
in Oklahoma, right?
But it was weird. Same thing. I have like one
Yeah.
memory of
I never heard
of
of it. Well, wait. So
Yeah.
So again, I'm just the main part of what you were focusing on was the Spanish War part. Did he talk about, or I didn't, like I said, I'm waiting to hear it from you, the World War II stuff.
So what happened is I pretty much just edited and transcribed the journal, and it kind of tells a linear story about when he was in Spain.
Okay.
Excuse me. All the other stuff is kind of background for things, and it's like kind of just I mentioned in the context.
History.
Yeah.
Which is
I
really
kinda-
cool.
Yeah, I love it, dude. That's my favorite. Literally my favorite thing. But so there's other context for stuff. But what happened is he goes. But the thing is, not knowing about him speaking Spanish. When they were in Arizona, and I was a kid, he would order things in Spanish or say stuff, and I just never knew it. But I was cleaning out, like when my dad died, we were kind of cleaning out his stuff, me and my mom, and I found this old Foot Locker. And this journal was in there from my grandpa.
Oh,
I didn't
cool.
even know it had existed. I didn't know this had ever been a thing. Nobody ever talked about it. Like I didn't.
It was probably
even
your
know.
grandpa's stuff, not your dad's.
Well, yeah,
stuff.
it was my grandpa's Foot Locker that he
Yeah.
left to my dad.
Probably
Yeah,
from the
that's
war.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So there's a bunch. I have a Harry Truman signed like discharge, like honorable discharge for my grandpa and stuff after World War II.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
We're talking with Tim, and how you say your last name again?
Schaiberger.
Schaiberger. I'm going to do the other way. You
Yeah,
explained,
no,
but no.
Bachelor
Tim Schaiberger.
sandwich.
Yeah, it's
You-
not on the book that way.
Yeah, Tim
Schaiberger.
Schaiberger. You wrote the book "A Boy Scout Goes to Spain and Other Stories." So, what are some of the other stories? Maybe I'm getting a little far ahead, but
Yeah, so
You're talking
that
about
is
the
the
Foot
main
Locker and
story.
stuff.
Yep. So the other stories is, and I was looking through this Foot Locker and kind of doing like, oh, this is cool. Like, look at all these paper clippings and old pictures. I found another journal, like another like notebook, and I opened that up, and that was a 3-month journal about my grandpa getting drafted into World War II, and he kept a handwritten journal of what he was going through
wow.
during that part. So that becomes the second part of the book. So that's one of the other stories.
I wonder if I think a lot of people did keep journals.
So many
I
did.
have about 20, and like they're full. There's a lot
of like your everyday life, like he's talking about his grandpa was
for a
doing?
while, like while I was in rehab in Pennsylvania, I had and Peoria, that because it was a 2-phase rehab. I did the whole entire time I was in there, every day, at least
Wrote every day.
once or twice a day, and wrote poems, wrote letters to friends of apology to family members, stuff.
And it's
of
all
that
in the
nature.
journal,
Yeah, lots
not
of that
separate
stuff.
like letters. Just one book that you wrote everything in.
Well, it's a bunch of books. It's strewn over across a bunch of pages because I have ADHD and I lose things, and then I find them again. Like, oh, my old notebook. I'm gonna refill that. You know, like,
I wonder.
So,
I
like,
wonder if your grandpa.
Oh, I'm gonna buy a new notebook.
I wonder if your grandpa had the same thing where maybe there's some you didn't see. The more of the spicy stuff you're talking about with your mom.
You know what? I would
that's your
probably
dad now and
assume
your mom, not your
something
grandpa.
because my grandpa was really talks about girls in there. Like, yeah, his big thing is all the girls. There's lots of girls here. Boy, I can't believe all the girls. Look at all the girls. So
Really?
He was definitely. into
Where were they?
women for
You mean
sure.
after boot camp? I guess.
No,
I'm
in
just saying.
Spain when he was a kid.
Oh, still when he was a kid. Okay.
When
Now
he
you're
was
going back.
married, he was talking about the loose morals of the English women.
Oh,
So
Interesting.
he gets into that. But his big thing is,
where was he stationed when he ended up in World War II? Then?
He was stationed initially in England. So he
Okay.
was in England pretty much doing surgery on the soldiers that had come back over from the front or where they're operating.
Probably there during the bombing raids and all that when they bombed the heck out of London.
I don't trust anybody who calls a cookie a biscuit. That's all I gotta say. I'm glad we got our independence.
We revolted for a reason. We revolted because we just can't deal with biscuit and cookie.
That's funny.
Sorry,
he did like his training, and it's just pretty much his observations on like the perils of war, and actually he went like once again took 5 days to get over there on a ship, you know.
So he was in probably because they had to move things around. He probably was in like a MASH unit.
He was in the first MASH unit after D-Day in Normandy. He was in one of the first ones that they set up on the edge of the beach. And
he ended up in France then.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's where he was actually ended up, was France.
Okay.
And he said one of the only real story he really told about World War II is that he got really good at identifying German planes, because after their bombing runs, they would fly away over the MASH hospitals so they wouldn't fire at them.
Oh,
so they would fly away over the Allied injured, because the Allies wouldn't fire at like the hospitals and stuff. And he said he could tell the planes flying over by just looking up, because they'd be flying like low over the MASH unit, so they wouldn't shoot at them.
I mean, for reference, which character do you think your grandpa would be like in MASH?
He would have probably been he would have been a combination of Hawkeye and the snooty dude.
Well, that was, that's the snooty dude.
What's his name?
Winchester.
Yeah.
Or the other guy, Frank Burns, Major Burns.
No,
either one of them.
I mean,
he's been Winchester.
Burns, I don't think Burns was very. I think Winchester was smart, just kind of like
more
he was
pompous.
a combination of kind of like funny like Hawkeye, but he was also like, my family was very well off, so he was kind of like posh too.
Well, that's Korean War, but I always thought it was World War II that they were portraying. That was Korean War with MASH.
They were portraying the Korean War with MASH.
Oh yeah, I know. I was just more going off the MASH topic.
But
what show had World War II characters? I don't know. Nothing that a lot of movies.
Like
Band of Brothers.
Yeah, but Band of
Brothers.
Brothers.
About like TV shows of the 70s or something.
Well, that's the thing though, is you wouldn't be able to do that because like Band of Brothers specifically, they're in the field. So you'd have to do like a MASH to have like what he actually did, because once again, he was a services officer and not like a military officer. So he was in the army and served, but he wasn't like a front lines guy.
So how do you write all that and again, I haven't read all the book. I've seen some excerpts. How do you write? Do you take his excerpts right out of his journal, or have you?
And then he gives historical background.
Yep, and then I give the context behind it. So I kind of give references. Full disclosure, I came across, my grandmother died, and I came across a little bit of money, and this has been a project that I've been working on for 20 years. And I was just gonna pay to get like 20 copies printed or something to give to
give to family.
I was gonna give to my uncles friends. If I had a couple extra, maybe see if my friends wanted to give me some money for it. So just on a lark, I submitted it. After years, I've done it numerous times, different ways. When I first moved down, I'm still working on a screenplay that I've kind of based on it, and invented this whole other character and storyline and stuff. But
wow!
But so that was working on all that. But then I just happened to, on a lark, send this in, and this company is like, "No, we actually really like this and would like to publish it."
Oh, great!
I'm like, "What?"
So you didn't self-publish? You have a publisher that did this for you?
Yeah, Austin Macaulay. So I mean, it's a joint thing, but it's like they're the ones who like do the advertising and put it on all the websites. Well, and they do everything for me.
Does it turn out? I don't know much about books. I know like the music industry where you get like a penny an album. I mean, you get more than that for a book.
I get more than that for a book. It's not.
Yeah, you get more money per book.
You get more money, way more money per book. Not as much. I could have probably, if I had like an agent or I went through like a manager, like a
you didn't
Rand McNally or something. No, because I was just maybe this company, and they're like, no, we really like this. Like I've never. Like maybe another writer can attest, you can submit a lot of things and just never hear back from anybody ever. So when
I hear back, it's just more of like the pricing that they offer. So I'm gonna self-publish Henry, but luckily I could still get it on Barnes with the publisher I found.
But Tim, you're not self-published, so how do they do it? They give you 10% of the royalties. So I'm curious how that works now.
Yeah, it varies on what they sell. It varies on if they sell a Kindle or the other. Okay. So it's it's 25-30%. It's not a big chunk. You can get more
it's worth it.
People. It's worth it completely. Yes, please. Well, the thing is that my research into this, because of marketing, I'm old fashioned. I'm not the guerrilla marketer like this guy, but a lot of the stuff, the research, and I used to do websites and marketing for people online and stuff. And I was looking into it, and that seems to be, yeah, exactly, dude. And that just seemed the best way to to find it.
Yeah, I mean, have you thought about like even schools might want to have this as like a reference to like a real life,
So
there's a journal of a doctor that was there. He was in Spain.
I went
and he was
to
in World
St.
War II.
Charles. There is a Boy Scout store in St. Charles that I went to, and did an event there, sold some books. Have been talking to a couple different schools about seeing if I can maybe make a part of the curriculum.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
If you
So I've talked. Yeah, dude. I've talked. I mean, if you know anybody,
I mean, you should try a
send them my way.
WASAP, like the Boy Scout camps, because sometimes they have speakers.
I've reached out numerous times, but the thing is, once I was looking into it, and if you can sell like 4,000 to 5,000 copies of a book, that is when people like agents start looking at you.
Oh,
because a big thing, the average person who's on the bestseller list, this research I found, are not selling as many books as you think they're selling.
No,
okay,
they're not
at
definitely
all.
not.
The numbers,
and a lot of it's puffed up,
and a lot of it's either puffed up, especially. I mean, I didn't want to get into like self books or people like doing like autobiography type stuff who buy their own to do the sales, but people that generally write fiction, a lot of the top sellers, like there are people on the New York Times bestsellers list that have sold less than 1,000 copies because of their name.
Oh,
or because they know the right people, or because their book
just
sold
1,000 or
before.
hundreds of thousands.
Like less than
1,000.
Yeah, like they've done research, like NPR or somebody did research that there was like they got in trouble because they were just advertising books and putting them on lists that didn't really sell that many.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know how that all works.
Yeah. So that's what I've been.
So many
our
people have
studio
done
light.
that.
We got to turn on our lights again.
Yeah. Did they go out?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, okay.
I just noticed it now.
But
anyway,
yeah.
so you're hoping to sell 50,000, 100,000, whatever.
Oh, I would love to sell 1 million, dude. What I want to do is my dream, and this is what I kind of, when Joe and I met up, my dream is I would love to make a documentary where I retrace my grandpa's steps through Spain, see what has changed, see what's the same, maybe use it as like fodder to maybe make an album out of it, have somebody follow my journey. Like that would be my dream. That would be what I would consider like the pinnacle of what I want to do with this particular project.
I like that idea. I mean, it's a cool name of a book. I mean, you piqued my interest, but I thought
the cover's cool too, man.
Yeah.
With like a
Boy Scout goes to Spain and other stories. So the other stories that you're referring to are, I think we covered some. What are there more than just?
So the other two stories, the main one, and these are all. So the 80% of the book is my grandpa's journal, and if you are into history, as Joe said, it's just very cool. If you want to learn about like what Europe was like in the 30s, kind of Spain, North Africa, bullfights, like all this stuff that like Hemingway sang the praises of, like my grandpa experienced firsthand.
Never heard of him. Who's that?
Pretty cool.
Hemingway.
So there was this gentleman named
some guy from Oak Park.
Talk about love in Northern Michigan. That guy loved Northern Michigan.
The war story guy, So that's a good person to be compared to. Yeah. That's for sure.
So the reason I did named it The Boy Scout Goes to Spain and Other Stories is because I found the journal for the World War II the first couple months, and it's not that you could tell he was more of an adult. He wasn't like as into it.
Yeah.
It was more, you could tell he's more cynical because he's seeing all these people being killed and stuff. And then it also stops abruptly.
Oh,
because I'm guessing, well, he's in war. I'm sure something happened and he probably didn't have time to write anymore.
So the other stories are still related to back in the day. There's nothing more recent. It's all the war stuff.
The last 3 pages are the basis for the sequel.
Oh, okay.
So the last 3 or 4 pages are my dad's first-hand account of the first night of the Tet Offensive in Vietnam.
Oh,
his compound was 100% destroyed, and he survived being buried under rubble. And fantastic.
So,
and this is one. This is one.
Segue it, or is it like just another epilogue or something? How does it relate to your grandpa?
Well, it segues because my grandma being pregnant with my dad. And then my grandpa going up, and then he comes home, and my dad grows up, and he gets drafted. And this is his one experience.
I want to see. I definitely want to read that. Are you working on book 2 already? Then
yes.
Okay.
Yes, and book 2 is kind of cool because I took it as a time frame between I'm kind of making it like a love story because whatever with my mom and dad, So, but it's kind of like.
Are you going to talk about the fierceness of your father?
I'm gonna. Well, that's the craziest.
His rugged caress. No, just kidding.
Well, dude, that's funny. I mean,
he's writing it. He's taking it right from the.
I've never. Journals. Everything I'm doing isn't though. That's the difference. Is this one? Everything from my dad before Vietnam, like the first 75 pages that establish a relationship before we go. Because my mom got married. Like my dad, and I'm going to give you a preview of this because I think this is more interesting than this stuff, but
Give us the preview.
let me give you the preview. My dad graduated from Albion, which is a very expensive private school in Southern Michigan.
Yeah.
Graduated from there, did not have enough grades and didn't do well enough on the MCAT to get into medical school.
Oh.
His goal was to be a doctor like his dad.
He wanted to be a doctor
He
too.
wanted to be a doctor like his dad. Worked for the county, hated it, figured his best opportunity, I'm going to enlist in the military, get medical training through that, learn maybe be like a medic or something,
Sure.
get my
EMT
training. So my dad started dating my mom. He went down to, he enlisted, was down in Texas, San Antonio, Fort Sam Houston, told my mom we're getting married. She was 19. She's like, oh, okay, sure. They got married. Well, awesome. 18 months down there. They were living in Texas, starting a life. Beautiful. My dad, when he first went in, he would try to get his commission, as we were talking about before with my grandpa going in.
Yeah,
so
service
going
officer,
in,
whatever you're calling it.
the difference between when people, like if you've heard of ROTC or anything, when people
Sure.
go into the military, when people come in, and this is always a great reference for Band of Brothers, because the character Tom Hanks' son comes in as a West Point graduate. He comes in as a lieutenant, and he's going to be in command of all these guys that have been at war for 5 years.
Right.
And he's just some scrub, 21-year-old
The
guy.
young
that
kid
comes
that,
in.
well, he learned how to be the command, but he didn't really learn real life experience. Right?
So my dad wanted to get in the military and training as soon as possible, and he was waiting on his commission, right? He wanted to be paid at the level that he got in there.
Yeah.
But he did so good at training, and he was teaching statistics, he was doing PT, like he was just going above and beyond, that he actually achieved a higher pay level as an enlisted man than he would have gotten for his commission
as a commissioned officer.
So he was making good money, loved working there, was teaching. Like my mom was there, she loved it. They had great friends. 18 months in, it was 1967, summer 67. My dad's like finally got an admission. He's like, commission finally came through. It was going to be a pay cut. He told them he didn't want the commission. A week later, he had individual orders to Vietnam.
Oh.
So what people don't know what that means is when you are drafted, you're not in the military.
Yeah.
If you are in the military and you already have an MO, a modus operandi, a mission specialty, and you are like usually like there's a lot of people in the military who just stay at bases. They never really go to war.
Again. What don't you know if you're not drafted?
So when you get drafted to go to war, you're not already in the military. If you are already in the military doing a service job, you can get individually selected to go to a war zone.
Oh.
So that is done as a punishment to people. So when you're drafted, they're just drafting you for the war. But if you're already in an established job at like a thing, at like a military institution, they are not going to send you over to the military. You weren't like a group of people. They're going in to drop on the thing.
The reason they drafted is because they needed soldiers and people didn't want to join, is what you're saying.
He had 18 months of service in, but turned down his commission because it was going to be a pay cut. And he's like, I have a wife, we're planning on having my brother was not born at that time, but like we're planning on having kids. So he turned down the commission and they sent him to Vietnam as a punishment.
Oh, oops.
Yeah.
I couldn't even imagine being in Vietnam. That's
so especially when you've been in the military 18 months with his superior officers fought tooth and nail to keep him. He's like, he's one of our best instructors. The troops love him. Why are you?
Because he didn't want to be an officer.
Because he was getting punished. So he ends up going. And then the interesting story is my mom's only 19. My grandpa and my grandma didn't like her.
You're
like,
saying punished. I'm not sure it was a punishment. It's just they needed him. If he didn't want to take that other job, then they needed him. They brought him as just like an E5, whatever rank it would have been, not officer rank. They needed him over there because he didn't want to stay in the job that they thought he was going to do, even though he's taking a pay cut. He would have been safe and stayed over, quote unquote, safe and stayed wherever they would have put him, not in the front lines in Vietnam, is what I'm getting at. I wouldn't call it a punishment. It's because they needed him. He didn't want that commission job because he wanted to keep his pay. So, okay, you're going with everybody else. I don't think the government actually, his commanding officers, quote unquote, punished him. They just needed his
commanding officers fought tooth and nail to not send him over. So,
yeah,
I don't guess think it's if they don't take him.
I think they just needed him. He didn't want to do what they wanted him to do, which would have probably been a little safer. Boom, you're going with the rest of the enlisted, E2s or E1s, whatever they are when they start out, privates, But he had some kind of rank when he was there.
Oh yeah, he was an E6, I think, E something.
Does your dad resonate with Creedence Clearwater Revival? For some reason,
Dude, he
every
was a
time I
big-
think of Vietnam,
Dude,
I
my
think
dad was a
of,
big
like-
Beach. My dad liked the Beach Boys.
Beach
He was
Boys
a
is
Beach
great.
Boys guy.
Beach
Yeah,
Boys
I
is
love the
great.
Beach Boys. Those
I don't
were
know
one
if
of
they
my
sang that much
favorites.
about Vietnam. They were all about
Oh
like
no, he
fun
wasn't.
stuff.
He was he wasn't like like super like military guy, but he was a respectful guy. He wasn't like super like he was one of those guys that really didn't talk about it a lot, but didn't
Yeah.
like.
But
really
he
do one thing
journaled
or the
about
other.
it, like the Tet Offensive and all that stuff.
So
No, he didn't journal
what's
about that
in my
part.
book was a handwritten letter that he wrote to my mom, because this was one of the most intense experiences he had there. And I just thought, like, this is kind of a cool way to end this story of him being over there. But when he got sick, he got diagnosed with brain cancer, and I was in college. And he started going around talking to people about his military experience, because people would always ask him to do, why have you talk about it? And he was finally he's like, I want to talk about it, before I go. So he started taking notes and stuff.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is handwritten notes, and he put together this kind of thing. So that's what I'm going to be basing this on, is I have it written out. Like, he did like an intro, and then he has some handwritten notes on what happened, on what do you call it? On what he kind of remembers, because he has a box of letters that he was going through that kind of jog his memory.
But it was about the Tet Offensive was one of them. Obviously,
Yes,
is in there.
Yep. And then
You
so
mentioned
that
that.
was just one of the that was one of the nights and stuff. But there's like a Marine shoots his own foot off in front of him, and like guys having bags of heads, and crazy stuff.
Rough.
Dude.
Bags of heads.
They would have the ants after they killed the Viet Cong. They have the ants clean off the heads, and this dude just had a bag of them, carrying them with them.
They didn't just bury him in the field, I guess.
Well, no, they were trophies.
Oh, gotcha.
And then when he got back to after the Tet Offensive, he was on a hospital ship for like a month. But when he comes back to Saigon, there's just stacks of bodies everywhere.
I wasn't going to bring it up because it's kind of dark, but I'm guessing there's probably, and again, I haven't read the whole book. Everybody's got to get his book. This is Tim's book. You got to get, and you'll know what we're talking about here. But I don't know if I want to bring it up or not, but I'm going to. But anyway, it's a Boy Scout goes to Spain and other stories. So we're in the other stories part. But did any of this, your grandfather, even your dad, and it's coming in the next book, talk about like what they did to the prisoners? Because that's always there's tons of movies about that. For Vietnam.
Oh my goodness!
And then the bridge over River Kwai is obviously World War II.
So my grandfather, all of his part of the book for his military service it's been England. He's in England. He's treating people, so he's not in a war zone.
Okay.
My father had a bunch of things because he was a combat medic over there.
Okay.
So, and that's a big difference from a normal medic. Because have you ever seen like Saving Private Ryan, like the movie Saving Private Ryan,
of
where
course.
Giovanni Ribisi's like, "Oh, keep the gun away from me. I'm a medic."
Right.
Yeah, in Vietnam, you did not have the luxury of not carrying a gun because they were just going to have a human way of attacking.
I'm sure
and
they
killing
probably they had
So-
guns.
so
They
I had
definitely had guns.
So I had to adjust to that. So,
But no, but like there was a lot of bad stuff that you hear about.
Yeah.
Did
Well,
you get into? Did he get into any of that?
So that's what I was going to say. So he was over there, and he actually, a woman was being tortured, and he was supposed to give her a shot to keep her going, and he ended up overdosing her and killing a lady.
Oh,
because she was being tortured.
So there is a story.
There's a bunch of them.
Oh, boy.
There's the lady.
This was like a
The scene,
townsperson.
speaking of MASH, do you remember the very famous MASH scene where Hawkeye's crying because he's telling her to stop the chicken, make that chicken, shut up the chicken, shut up the chicken.
Yeah.
She muffles her baby. Happened to my dad.
I don't know that reference. I maybe never saw that episode
So
of MASH.
Hawkeye's, he's on a bus and they're trying to be quiet, right? Do you remember the scene better than me?
I remember the crying part.
So,
Like,
from what the gist of it is they
that's the main
were
part I remember.
hiding. They were in hiding.
And the
they-
chicken.
and there was a loud chicken, and Hawkeye's like, just shut that chicken up. That's gonna get us killed. Shut that chicken up. And the chicken stops clucking, and he gets and realizes it was a baby.
Oh,
So he gets back to the room and realizes this lady smothered her baby to keep it quiet because it would have alerted like the North Koreans to like kill us or whatever.
so your dad had a similar story when he was a medic.
Bunch of them, like losing women to like seeing women gone by snipers. Just the people like the piles of like they would poop in the floor, and so they like there was just nobody cleaning up anything. So like stalls were just full of crap all the way to the top of the stalls.
Yeah, I guess who would be there to clean it up?
The one Marine came into his office because he was had an actual office for a while, which is weird. But he came in and held a gun to my dad's head and said, "If I shoot you, Doc, do I get to go home?" And my dad said, "Yeah, but I don't." And the guy blew his foot off in front of him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so is that in the is that that's something we're going to talk?
Oh, that's going to be. I'm
preface here
getting
to-
in. I am getting.
So was he
into this,
dishonorable?
What's up?
The guy
Was
that
it-
shot himself?
Yeah.
The
was
guy,
it
well, the guy that shot
dishonorable?
himself went home pretty quick after that.
Yeah,
You
was it-
know,
was it a
definitely psych.
dishonorable
I
for
don't know
sure?
whatever happened
No, when
to
you-
him, but that was the dude who had the bag of heads up.
I'm not sure. if
Well,
they would-
I mean, I guess it's good he went home.
Yep.
they wouldn't
you know,
consider that a
I think-
dishonorable discharge. I don't think.
I think they would consider that a psychological discharge. if
Yeah,
anything,
there's
'cause
some-
if you're-
Ah,
because
okay,
If
psychological,
he would have
okay.
shot my dad, well, you wouldn't be talking.
That would have been
but-
that would have been
but that
murder.
would have
been
That would have been just
But-
prison.
But he just said a big thing that he also noticed was like the people who like short timers and stuff. Because a lot of things another thing a lot of people don't know, World War II, World War I, when you got drafted, you were there till the war was over.
Yeah, I was going to say they don't bring you home.
In Vietnam, they're like, "Oh, you got a year." It's like, so think about the human psyche. Like, oh my God, I just got to survive 3 more days.
Yeah, I don't know.
3 more, you know what I'm saying? Like, but just
and
the
that's
way
when
it
they
messed
get
with their
bombed or
psyches,
whatever,
yeah.
or they walk on a mine. I mean, there's some gory stories to the,
well, in the stuff
especially
that
the Vietnam War.
Well,
And
he's
hiding under the patties, you know, like all the crazy.
the
things
TED
that
offense. The
happened.
craziest thing about the recollection in the book is it was an inside job.
Oh,
He was woken up in his barracks by a satchel charge. So somebody took a bomb bag, threw it in the front door. It blew up in the barracks.
oh, geez.
They had gotten through the concertina wire. They had gotten through all the guards. Because
They went underground. They had those
No.
tunnels. No,
So my dad was special forces when he was in Vietnam. So he was stationed. His entire group there was maybe another 10 Americans, but it was a chunk of Australians and mostly South Vietnamese regular soldiers.
wow.
When they ended up, he even mentions at the end, nobody even turned on the lights. There were no flares fired. There was nothing done in defense of that compound.
Oh,
There was the dogs weren't set off. Nothing set off. So that'd be like, imagine if there was a fence around this building.
so how did they get in then? Is it in
They
the
let
book?
him in.
I mean, is it in the
his
diary?
he assumes.
Or
I
journal?
mean, that's his assumption.
So did they like
because
Trojan horse him?
Somebody turned off the. Somebody let them in
Security.
is what it came
Yeah,
down to
yeah.
because there is
Why
no
would
way.
they let him in? Somebody that doesn't like the Americans.
Well,
over
it was
there
the
probably,
Tet Offensive, and
Yeah.
that was the point in the war. Like the big thing about the Tet Offensive is we were kind of losing, and nobody really knew, or we were winning. We're winning. And
Right.
then just because we were killing so many of them, and it's like that doesn't necessarily mean we're winning because we're killing all of them. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of winter of 1967, all the South Vietnamese attacked like 30 places at the same time. And they had no idea that was going to happen. They had no idea they had those kind of capabilities. So they
Wow.
were just completely taken off guard.
I
by that.
imagine that would take you off guard.
Yeah.
And that's in the journal, but it's not in this book.
That's going to be in the
next
sequel.
book.
Yeah. So
that's what
why it was
happens
so-
when we sometimes try to play Big Brother across the world.
Wow.
I mean, it's true
But-
because like we go into their territory sometimes, and it's
Well,
like we
I-
don't know their land.
I mean, it's
We
there's
don't
so
know
much
their
to say.
grid.
Mhm.
You know,
And again, we're going to wrap it up here, but I definitely want to get to where we can find the book. It's Boy Scout Goes to Spain and Other Stories by
Yes.
Tim
Schaiberger.
Mr. Schaiberger over here.
Mr.
Tim
Schaiberger. Yes, yes.
And we can find it, obviously, the online version, Kindle, Amazon, where else?
Barnes and Noble, you can find it at Books A Million. But I would really,
that's
if you
cool.
guys want to learn more and learn some other cool stuff, and maybe learn the cool story about my grandpa's summer before he goes to Spain, which is pretty cool in northern Michigan, you can go to my website, which is a Boy Scout Goes to Spain.com, and you can check out all my other stuff. You can find links to my music as well. But that would be the easiest way to go, and then you can get from whatever site you want. They were all linked on my website, Boy Scout Goes to Spain.com.
order the
Awesome.
man's book.
Yeah, no,
Buy my book.
definitely. Thanks for being here, Tim. It was great meeting you.
Thank
Great
you so
story.
much, guys.
I can't wait to see the second book or the movie of the first one. So we'll
Or the
have you back.
documentary, fingers crossed.
We'll
Let's
have
get
you
that
back,
going.
I'm sure.
Thank you to
Thanks again.
Tim
Thank you
Bashful
so much.
Sandwich.
Yeah.
So you've
Thank
been
you.
listening to another episode of Bell and Company. That was Joe Brunker. I'm Mario J. Bell. Our guest was Tim Schaiberger. I got it.
Schaiberger.
Schaiberger. Tim Schaiberger. Everybody, thanks for listening again, and we'll be back next time with another great show for you. Take care.